Hi everyone, welcome to the second video of the CRST exam prep playlist. Today we're going to be talking about safety management systems. This is also referred to as occupational health and safety management systems. So like I mentioned in my previous video, I'm not a teacher, I'm just a student studying for the CRST exam. With that being said, I will be using credible sources for my videos. This video, for example, is based off of the Big Book of Safety Knowledge prepared by the Canadian Society of Safety Engineering. So with that being said, let's get right into the content. I'm going to start off by sharing my screen. So safety management systems. So I'm going to break this topic down into four different parts. We're going to start off by talking about what safety management is. It's going to be a really general overview. Then we're going to get into systems approach. So systems approach is used in different organizational management strategies, and it can be used for safety management as well. Once we understand these two concepts, we're going to bring it together and talk about safety management systems, also referred to as SMS. And finally, we're going to finish this lecture off by talking about the factors that make an effective SMS. So what is safety management? Well, it's composed of two key components. Well, first of all, you want to ensure the protection of workers from workplace injuries and illnesses. The second goal is to meet the legal, auditing, and organizational requirements through the integration of OHS risk management in the sustainable business practice. And this can be accomplished by implementing a set of principles, frameworks, processes, and measurements to prevent accidents and injuries in the workplace. So safe systems of work is a requirement in Canada. It is mandated by the OHS legislation. So every person employed in Canada has the right to a safe work environment. So in each jurisdiction in Canada, the Occupational Health and Safety Act, or its equivalent, is based on the internal responsibility system. So what is the internal responsibility system? It states that essentially every person in an organization is responsible for health and safety. It is not just the job of the health and safety rep. The health and safety rep is helping facilitate health and safety. However, everyone is responsible, and that includes the employer, the management and supervisors, employees, and other suppliers and contractors that work with the organization. So that's the general introduction to safety management. Now let's talk about systems approach. So the systems approach or systematic approach is a management perspective that states that a business problem should be seen as part of a complete system that's made up of subsystems. You want to see how each subsystem relates to one another and to the organization as a whole. So that's like a puzzle, right? The different pieces of the puzzle are the different subsection or subsystems in an organization, and they work together and with the organization's overall goals and objectives to solve problems. So it's a very integrated approach, right? So just as an example, the different pieces of the puzzle or an organization would be the different departments. So health and safety and accounting. And these two systems would work together, and they would also work to solve or to reach an organization's overall objectives. So there are some components that make the systems approach effective. So these four factors mentioned in the textbook are dependency, responsiveness, results, and focus. So let's start off with dependency. So like I mentioned in the previous slide, each subsystem derives input from another system. So essentially they work together. For example, the health and safety department depends on the financial department. If they, with the WSIB claims, for example, and the insurance premiums, they're going to impact the financial department. And so these systems work together. And if health and safety needs PPE, for example, they need to consult with the financial department of the organization. So these systems don't work in silo, they work with each other. And they also depend on each other. So if the financial department is wanting to, implement some type of strategy to reduce the expenses, the health and safety department would interact and work with them to get to those goals. Responsiveness is essentially an organization's ability to react to environmental changes. So all subsections need to be able to respond to environmental changes. So an example of a change would be changes in regulation. So all these different subsystems in an organization need to work together to respond to that change. Results. So this ties a little bit into the dependency aspect here, but if an organization wants to produce a certain result, the entire system needs to work together to reach that target. So for example, if the goal is to reduce spendings, every department needs to work towards that goal. And the health and safety department can do that by improving their risk management so that they're seeing a reduction in WSIB claims, which is going to help reduce the WSIB premiums, which would help reach that overall goal. Now, every other department can also do the exact same thing. To reach that target, they can set other targets and things that they specialize in to reduce their expenses. The final component is focus. So each subsystem has clear responsibilities or boundaries to make the overall system work. So think of it like an essay. You have a thesis and you have your 3 points. Your 3 points have their own focus, right? But these 3 points help answer the thesis question, right? So they are working to solve the same problem, but they have their own distinct focus. Hopefully that helps kind of clarify what it means by focus. Having those boundaries, but boundaries doesn't mean working in silo. It means that there's distinctions between the subsystems, but they're able to still work together. Okay. And I really like this diagram because it kind of breaks down what I've said so far into more categories. So first of all, interconnection between subsystems. So these systems are not working in isolation. That's point 1 and 2. Number 3, there are boundaries between the subsystems. Number 4 and 5 address being sensitive to the environment and therefore being able to change as a result of those environmental changes. And number 6, which is not in the previous diagram, is monitoring and taking action. So that covers the systems approach. Now let's put safety management and systems approach together. So SMS helps businesses align health and safety with the organization's overall strategic plan. It is a proven system of procedures and processes that employers implement to continuously improve health and safety, reduce the risks of injuries and illnesses, and hold senior leadership accountable. So a systematic approach to manage safety includes the necessary organizational structure, management accountability, safety policies and procedures to successfully identify and manage risks, right? So you need to have that organizational structure in place, and you can have your management being accountable because they are signing off on these important safety policies and processes. And by signing off and by really buying into this, into the safety management system, it is possible to have a successful management system. So a successful SMS can lead to a performance-based management, right? You want to go from just complying to the rules and regulations and not really being focused on the people. You're just saying, all right, we just gotta, make sure we're following the standards and regulations, and that's it. You want to go from doing the bare minimum to being performance driven, right? So with an SMS, with a safety management system, you're saying by improving our safety in our organization, it's going to help improve our business. It's not just, oh, we're doing this because we need to. It's let's use effective safety management to improve our organization as a whole. That is what safety management allows. And I'll get a little bit into it once we talk about the benefits of an SMS, which I'll get into a little bit later on. So some important aspects that lead to performance-based management is, and what makes it different from compliance is that there's management accountability. Management is involved in the safety management process. It's not just the health and safety department doing their own thing, trying to get people to comply. Management is stepping in, they are buying into safety, and they are being accountable. And there's also the implementation of risk management procedures. So what are the benefits of safety management systems? So first of all, it increases the protection of the workers, which is the most important thing of safety management. Second of all, it improves the OHS and business performance. So business performance. And I'm going to bring in the WSIB premiums again. If you, as an organization, are taking initiatives to improve the safety in your organization, this is going to be reflected in your WSIB claims. So if you have an effective system, there's going to be less injuries, which is going to reduce your WSIB premiums, which is going to help improve your business performance, right? It's going to also reduce organizational risks. So you're not going to be dealing with like legal issues. You're going to have everything that you need for your due diligence process. It also improves your market reputation and return on investment. An example of this would be the certification of recognition in Ontario. If you have your core or certification of recognition core, this not only helps workers be safe, and it is quite an investment of resources and time. However, a lot of organizations will want to work with a core certified company. And so this will make you more marketable. And finally, it can enhance employee trust and loyalty, which kind of ties a little bit into business performance, because from an HR perspective, it's great to have employee trust and loyalty, because then you have less turnover, and that is very good for business performance. So these are the benefits of safety management systems, or effective safety management systems. So what makes an effective safety management system? There are 4 factors. Number 1, there's continual improvement. There are system activities, stakeholder involvement, auditing, and verification. So let's start off with continual improvement. So with continual improvement, the goal is to be able to be adaptive to rapid changes by continuously improving your work processes and activities. Whenever you introduce new processes and activities, there are always going to be hidden risks. So you want to stay on top of those changes to prevent incidents. So with continual improvement, there are 4 distinct aspects. First of all, you want to see annual improvements in health and safety results. So if, say, there's been a lot of concussions in the workplace, you need to implement a plan right? And you need to be, and we're going to get into it a little bit, but you want to implement a plan. You want to go through the plan, do, check, act cycle, PDCA. I'll get into it later on. But by implementing this, you are then going to be working towards improving your results in OHS. The second thing that you want to do is you want to reduce occupational health and safety resource demands. And so again, with the WSIB claims, if you are creating a lot of WSIB claims due to lots of injuries, you now need more financial resources because those WSIB premiums are going up. Number 3, you want to be able to change the organizational climate and culture to be more effective and efficient in occupational health and safety. So climate is easier to change than culture. You implement a new system and the climate changes. With culture, this is something that's really integrated. This is like the way that people think and work in an organization. So you do have to consider that changing safety culture is an excellent goal. However, it will be one of those like long-term goals, and it's worth investing in to see that continuous improvement. And finally, you want to improve the safety management system itself. So you want to have a better integration. You want to have it being easy to understand. So you're not using like technical jargon in your policies and SOPs, your safe operating procedures. You want them to be easy to understand so that people can actually follow them. And you want better integration. So an example of that is if you have a central repository where you have all your important HR documents and everybody knows where it is, everybody uses that specific website, you want to implement your safety management system there because now it's not another link for people to learn about. It's better integrated into what they're already familiar with. So how can you implement continual improvement? Well, you want to have processes set in place that help you identify and assess hazards and risks. So an example of that is a job hazard assessment. You want to evaluate, implement, and monitor suggested improvements. And most importantly, you want to engage frontline workers and supervisors in the continuous improvement process. So what that means is if you want to address a hazard, talk to the workers and supervisors. Ask them, hey, what are the problems in your workplace? They will tell you, you will implement those controls, and now you have buy-in from these workers and supervisors, and because you've talked to them. So if you implement a control, you're gonna say, yeah, like, they're fixing what we told them about, right? So now the workers and supervisors are engaged in that safety process, which is really important. And also they're giving you the most relevant information, right? Going back to, actually, I'm going to talk about it in the future, so bear with me. Just getting ahead of myself here, but yeah, you want to get frontline workers engaged in the process. All right, so I mentioned the PDCA model. So the PDCA model is made up of 4 stages. So the first stage is to plan. You want to analyze the problem, you want to set goals and establish priorities, you want to assign responsibilities, and decide how performance will be measured. That is the first step for continual improvement. So if there's like a certain system that you want to improve, you start off with the planning stage. Then you implement the plan and you implement those procedures and you communicate the goals. You also provide any necessary training. Check. You monitor and measure your data. You collect and assess worker feedback. And finally, you document and report your results. The final step in the PDCA model is to act. You want to review your findings and you want to use your knowledge to make those improvements. The most important thing to keep in mind as you go through the PDCA model is to ensure proper communication or effective communication and engagement. All right, so that covers the first factor that makes an effective SMS, continual improvement. The second aspect is systems activities, and there are two parts to this. First of all, you want to have a detailed description of your high-level objectives, right? So these are like your health and safety policy, for example. And then you want to have those high-level objectives being used to develop SMS activities. So that includes things like your safe operating procedures, SOPs. So there are some factors that you want to consider when you develop SMS activities. First of all, you want to consider the type of hazards that you're dealing with. Are these simple or complex hazards? Are there lots of hazards or just a few? Number two, you want to consider the type of organization that you're dealing with. What is the hierarchy like? What are some of the activities that are done in this organization? Is this industrial construction or is this a public company? You know, you want to know this type of information when you are implementing SMS activities. Number three, the range of technologies that are made available to implement your SMS activities. And finally, legislation and standards. So I just thought it'd be cool to kind of put down a list of some of the types of hazards out there. For example, we have the ergonomic hazards, physical, chemical, biological, and workload hazards, right? So if you're in an office setting, you would be exposed to ergonomic hazards. If you're in a lab, biological and chemical, and so on and so forth. There are also some other types of hazards, like you've got your hydrocarbons, mechanical, electrical, pressure, noise, thermal, radiation. Maybe you'd see more of these in an industrial setting. But despite knowing all these hazards, there are also site-specific hazards that you need to be aware of. For example, if there is a construction, specifically a building construction project, you would have very specific hazards like unstable or unsafe structural membranes, unsafe work platforms, working at heights, unsafe scaffolds, falling objects, unsafe excavation. And of course, these are the top 10 hazards that occur in construction settings. So maybe asbestos could be a concern. And so this is why it's very important to get, and I was getting ahead of myself previously, and now we're here. So what I was trying to say is that you want to get the workers and supervisors that are on site to be involved because they can identify these very specific hazards in their workplace. Right, and this also kind of ties into that second aspect of SMS activities, which was organizational activities. So again, if it's a construction setting, it's going to have, you know, an overlap with industrial activities. However, there are also very specific hazards that you'd find in industrial or construction setting that you wouldn't find in the other settings. So you need to be aware of that. And like I mentioned, you need to be aware of the organizational structure. If there's a hierarchical structure, for example, it might be harder to implement changes compared to if it is a flat structure. And what are the ranges of technologies available? So we've got the good manufacturing practices, which are pretty much just guidelines for different industries. And the second range of technology that I want to talk about is the standard operating procedures, right? So these are your SOPs. And these can be, sorry, just to add on, these can be used to implement those SMS activities. You also want to keep the legislation and standards in mind. So in Ontario, we have the OHSA Green Book. In Canada, we have the Canadian Human Rights Act and the National Building Code of Canada. Keep in mind that some jurisdictions in Canada will use the National Building Code, while other jurisdictions will have their specific building and fire codes. For example, Ontario has its own fire code. So you want to keep, first of all, up to date to legislation when you're creating SMS activities. And you also want to be aware of which legislations apply to your jurisdiction. So you want to express all SMS activities in the form of performance benchmarks that can be evaluated according to predefined goal-setting criteria. So these are basically documents or measures that are created before something goes wrong, right? That can help you evaluate your SMS activities. So, for example, you have your health and safety policy statement. You want to have a registry of relevant hazards and controls for different tasks. So these are your job hazard assessments. You want to have reports for work accidents and for near misses, because near misses, if they're not addressed, this can result to very expensive accidents. So that's why it's important to not only have a report of work accidents, but you also want to have those near misses. And finally, another performance benchmark is to generate recommendations and preventative measures. And so having these 4 different performance benchmarks, they serve as your predefined goal-setting criteria. All right, so the next topic that we're going to talk about is stakeholder involvement and how that helps create an effective SMS. So you want to involve your internal stakeholders, and this includes the directors, trustees, and senior management. You want to have the workforce or the employees involved in your safety management system. You want to have unions and GHSAs involved, joint health and safety committees, as well as the OHS professionals. There are also external stakeholders that can impact a safety management system, and this can include government regulators, corporate social responsibility programs, so public corporate reporting, NGO guidelines for industry best practices that are done globally, and you would want to implement that into your safety management system. And you also want to see what global bodies like WHO or NAFTA are saying, and their feedback or their guidelines can be used to enhance your safety management system. And the final aspect here is auditing and verification. So auditing refers to the assessment of OHS processes through periodic sampling of corporate documents, SOPs, records, and these are conducted by a competent person. So what does it mean by a competent person? So a competent person is someone who is knowledgeable, they have the training and the experience to organize the work and its performance, and is familiar with the laws and regulations that apply to the work, right? So just going back to the slide here, with auditing, you want to do your monthly inspections of different documents, or even different parts of your different parts of your business. So for example, if you have lots of buildings, you want to do your audits on site as well, and they're done by competent workers. So you can also, as an organization, obtain different certifications, although it is not a legal requirement. But there are a lot of benefits of obtaining these legal or these certifications. First of all, they can give corporate prestige, saying that, hey, we are an ISO 14000 certified, uh, our safety management system is certified. It gives the corporation prestige. Employees would want to work here, for example. This is sort of their marketability. Number two, contractual bidding requirements. So this goes back to that example I gave about the certification of recognition in Ontario. Certain companies don't want to work with organizations that don't have these safety certifications. Number three, it gives you legal protection and due diligence. So that's really important because even though it's not a legal requirement, it is your job as an employer to do everything reasonable to protect your workers. So by implementing a certification of recognition of an external standard, you would most likely cover those due diligence requirements. And finally, it helps manage your risks, which is, of course, the most important part of safety management. So these are the factors that make an effective SMS. 1, continual improvement. 2, system activities, stakeholder involvement, and auditing and verification. So that pretty much, guys, covers the topic for today. We talked about what safety management is. Then we talked about then we talked about the systems approach and how all the different subsystems in an organization need to work together to accomplish organizational goals. Then we put it together, talked about safety management systems, and finally, some of the factors that make an effective SMS. So that pretty much concludes this lecture, but in the next video, we're going to talk about different global safety management systems, and I briefly touched on them today, and one of them is the ISO 14000 or the OHSMS 18000. So these are some of the different standards, and we'll talk about some more in the next video. We're going to talk a little bit more about the PDCA model. We're going to talk about safety management from an organizational context, and finally, the roles and responsibilities in SMS. So thank you for watching this presentation. Hopefully it helps you. And yeah, thank you for watching. See you in the next video.